How difficult is the process of knowing, understanding what is the righteous action, of knowing what it means to be a good man or a good woman?
Well, the truth has consequences. So don't seek out the truth unless you're willing to abide by what you find. So a lot of people want to mold their journey in accordance with a predetermined pursuit that they already have. And so when they approach religion, they approach it like another product. There was an article that was actually written by a rabbi. I've spoken about this in several sermons. It was called The Allure of Narcissistic Spirituality. The Allure of Narcissistic Spirituality, where he talks about, how religion becomes just another product of your own self-adoration and worship, to where you only approach religion to the extent that it gives you more happiness in the worldly sense. You only approach of it what is therapeutic. So it becomes just as secular in its nature as any other practice of meditation or whatever it may be, or some other product. And he kind of mentions, how he took that from a person that is praying in a temple, and a guy walks into the temple and bumps into him, and then he curses the guy out. So he didn't see his behavior towards that person as part of his trajectory of worship. He just saw his being godly as the worship that he was engaged in. The truth has consequences. The truth has circumstances that are required of you, actions that are required of you that may be somewhat inconvenient. So you have to be willing to engage in a sincere pursuit of truth and look for truth for what it is, and not simply look for comfort and convenience. And when you engage in that journey of wanting to know, you have to engage it thoroughly and sincerely, and try your best to remove any bias. I think that's what makes the religion of Islam such a phenomenon for people, that with all the Islamophobia and the bigotry towards it, it's still the fastest growing religion in the United States and the fastest growing religion in the world. And no, that's not all birth rate. Yeah, we have a lot of kids, but many people, you met someone just before we started this interview. Many people, in fact, in a post 9/11 world, saw what they saw of Islam in the media, and they actually, went and checked out copies of the Quran and started to read about the religion, and in their sincere pursuit of truth, ended up embracing a religion that they believed was the greatest source of destruction in the world, and now it's the greatest source of peace for them in their own existence, in their own lives. And so you have to be willing to engage in a sincere pursuit of wanting to know, and then be willing to engage in sincere commitment after you know. Otherwise, the heart rusts. And so there's a process, the Quran talks about this, of making the heart like fertile soil towards truth. So you have a sincere pursuit, but then at some point, if you come to know and then you ignore what you come to know, then the heart rusts, and it becomes harder to recognize it the second time around and the third time around. And so when people come to me and they say, I'm looking for something, I'm looking for God, I'm looking for my purpose, the first thing I tell them is I say, listen, what you need to do is, if you're really looking for God and you believe in God, and there are often people that say, I believe in God, but I don't know where to go with this, right? I know that there's something greater. And in Islam, we call that the fitrah, a natural disposition towards the belief in the existence of God. But where do I go from here? What do I do now? And I say, the first thing you need to do is, you need to sincerely say, oh God, guide me to the truth. Call upon God sincerely. Say, I'm calling upon you alone, and I'm asking you to guide me to the truth. Show me what it is, right? And that's the heart function. Then you need to actually investigate and try to suspend bias, right? Investigate the world's religions, investigate the claims to truth, investigate, use, rational inquiry to the extent that the heart becomes satisfied, and suspend bias, and you'll be surprised. And so for a lot of people, when they come to me and they say, this about Islam, I'm like, look, if you're just going to talk to me about what you've seen of Islam in the media, if you were serious about it, if you're serious about it, then you're not simply going to be satisfied with the highly edited images and distorted facts that come towards you about this religion, right? What are you looking for, right? Are you looking for a scapegoat? Islam poses a threat to many people, right? Are you looking for a scapegoat? Are you looking for the big, bad, scary foreign enemy? Or are you looking at a religion that 1/4 of the world adheres to? And if 1/4 of us were bad, the world would not exist, right? So are you looking towards this religion that 1/4 of the world adheres to? Are you going to read about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? Are you going to read the Quran yourself? Are you going to investigate for yourself what it is that this faith has to offer and find in it a great sense of wisdom, a great sense of beauty, a great sense of truth? And I think that for a lot of people, they find that Islam has such a beautiful combination of the intellectual proofs as well as the spiritual experiences that often combine what people seek in the Western and the Eastern religions. So I had an interesting 2 weeks. 2 weeks in a row. This was August. 2 weeks in a row, I had someone who converted to Islam that went from being that started off as a Methodist, went from being a Methodist to being a Buddhist to being a Muslim.
Oh.
So 2 weeks in a row, I had a Methodist turned Buddhist turned Muslim.
Great journey.
And I called my Methodist friends. I have a lot of Methodist pastors in the city that I work with, and I said, "What's going on here, man? You sending people onto this interesting journey of Buddhism and then Islam." But both of them had a very similar story, which is that they had sought in Buddhism, for example, some of the meditative practices that are found, that really Western religion, which has been dominated by capitalism and dominated by very material things and can be very unfulfilling. They found that in some of the Eastern philosophies and the meditative practices. And then they came to Islam, and it combined, their belief in sort of the Abrahamic way. It merged their belief in one God and the prophets like Abraham and Moses and Jesus, peace be upon them all, with a deep tradition of meditative practices, of consciousness, of connection to God on a regular basis. And they found that to be very fulfilling, both intellectually and spiritually. And so I was like, that's interesting, 2 people in 2 weeks that went through that journey. So I think Islam is very wholesome, comprehensive when people actually approach it with humility and appreciate what it has to offer.